In this video, I'm going to be talking about the living proof documentary, Matt Embry's MS story. I'll do a movie review and share a little bit of my own experience. But before I do, I'm Jen DeTracy, and this channel is Women Thriving with MS. And if you haven't already subscribed, be sure to do that below. Also, I have a private Facebook group for women living with MS. Check out that link below. So let's dive into this movie review. I'm going to talk about 5 key elements. The first, the movie itself. The second is the credibility of the sources that Matt has included. The third is Big Pharma. The fourth is the MS Society. And the fifth is MS Hope. This film is about the adversity that people living with multiple sclerosis are faced with when they want to take a natural course of treatment and healing, or at least stabilizing the MS, rather than taking a pharmaceutical drug route. And the challenges behind that, and really debunking why that is so difficult for us as people that live with MS. I think the reason why I've only given this movie a 4.5 out of 5 is because, like many films, it is too long. There's a bit of redundancy. Now, I understand that Matt really wanted to build up the tension in the film, and I think that he's done an excellent job of kind of adding layer after layer after layer of proof as to why these adversities in taking a natural course of action in terms of health are so difficult to achieve. And ultimately, the movie Living Proof is about living proof of his success of taking this natural course and how others too have had success. Credibility is really important when you have a documentary, because you want a mix of different people from different areas and different experience to validate the point that Matt wants to make, which is that the medical industry and the drug industry is driving people's choices around taking medication and playing with people's emotions. So I'll come back to that when I talk about Big Pharma. But what I want to say here is that I really like the mix that Matt has. So he's talking about it from his personal experience, his family members. Then he has medical experts, someone from a publication, from the media, people that have taken a natural approach to MS and have had success, a published author. There's a good mix of interviews that have happened. And I would say, I think there's like maybe 4 or 5 people in total that he's interviewed that live with MS at all varying degrees. People that are incredible, that don't have very little mobility at all, to a person who has moderate mobility, to people that are very mobile. So that kind of that whole spectrum. So I really like that. So in terms of the credibility of the people that are sharing, I would put that at a 4.9 out of 5. Very, very high. Yes. Okay, this is really interesting. When we talk about the big pharma industry, what we're talking about here is how the drug companies have power and influence over all aspects of people living with MS. First of all, doctors. There was in writing a fact that 94% of doctors, now this information is from the US, so I'm not sure about Canada where I live, are receiving some kind of monetary benefits from the drug companies. You know, when you're getting that, there is a certain leaning towards recommending medications and being adamant about it. In my own experience as a woman who's been living with MS for almost 10 years now, when I've heard other people talk about their neurologist, first thing they want to do is get them on drugs right away as soon as they're diagnosed. My neurologist, I was very lucky. My first neurologist, I've had 2, because I relocated to a different part of Canada, so I had to go with a different neurologist. I love my first neurologist. She was somewhat open to me not going on a drug, And I'll talk about that in another video. I'm going to do one about Tecfedra. I've been on 2 types of medication. I was not a person who wanted to go on medication. I wanted to take a natural route. The other aspect of Big Pharma, and this is something that is brought up in the film in a big way, and I'll just talk about it briefly because I think I cannot do it justice like the film does. Big Pharma, they not only fund doctors, but they fund research and all kinds of things. The challenge is that you've got this big body in the US called the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, and they make decisions and rules and regulations around what the pharmaceutical industries can and cannot do. And one thing that the pharmaceutical industry was never pushed to do was to do long-term research on medications. This is very disheartening in my mind. I feel very sad and upset about it. I know that people are just waiting for the cure. They're waiting for a medication that they can take that will solve all their problems. It's going to be a long time coming. And if it's not something that is produced in a manufacturing capacity, then the pharmaceutical industry wants nothing to do with it and they won't support it because then they're not making ongoing money. So they're not supporting these progressive and innovative ways to help people stop progression and increase mobility. And that is the tragedy. So that's all I'll say about Big Pharma. You can watch the movie and really dive deep into what's happening. I'm taking a breath here because now we're going to be talking about number 4, which is the MS Society. And I have to say that my experience with the MS Society, I've had some very positive experiences in Canada with the MS Society around support. So the support group really that part didn't really work for me, other than I went for maybe a year to get information so that I could make proper decisions. And that's where I learned that the MS Society had pro bono lawyers that could advocate for you. And that was probably the best thing that I got from the MS Society, because I had claimed on my tax for a medical device that was like several $1,000s. The government of Canada would not let me write it off because it wasn't under the category that they would deem allowable. I asked the lawyer if he could help me. He was able to fight that case and it was reversed. The government would not agree that they had made a change, so I couldn't broadcast it out to the world that now that everybody could use this medical device that I was using at the time and write it off on their taxes. So it wasn't like the big David Goliath fight that I wanted to have a win in, but for me it meant that I didn't owe the government hundreds of dollars in tax money. So that was amazing. So I think that the MS Society has some really great programs, and for people that want to go to the support groups, I think that is fantastic. Problem is, and this is tragic and really, breaks my heart, is number 1, that the MS Society is funded by or partially funded by the pharmaceutical industry. So they, they're hooked in together. They have biases, is what I'm trying to say. From the year 2010 to 2013, that only 16 cents to every dollar was going towards MS research from the MS Society. And this is what Matt uncovered. And in fact, in 2014 to 2017, only 11 cents to every dollar that people are donating to the MS Society is going to research. And believe me, I'm going to be having conversation with my parents about this. Now, they may still want to contribute, and that's their choice, but I want to make them aware of how small the amount is. I think that it will shock them. I'm not looking forward to that conversation, but it needs to happen. So this is the problem, is the MS Society produces newsletters in which they announce and talk about new drugs from the pharmaceutical industry. My parents were so excited. They sent me the newsletter by mail. They said, "You've got to look at this." And when I read the front page, there was like this much information about that drug. So really, it's just an advertisement for the drug company. It doesn't have the pros and cons or any of the research or a link to where you can go to more details. It doesn't talk about side effects. Nada. Nothing. Unfortunately, now this is in Canada that I'm talking about, the amount of money that donations. I don't know what it's like in the US, but I imagine all around the world that Big Pharma is putting money into the MS Society. So just be aware of that. And lastly, I want to talk about MS Hope. The MS Hope is a foundation in which people can donate to put money towards research. But when it was started by Joan and Ashton, Matt Embry's parents, they had volunteers and did everything for free. Everything is posted. As a person living with MS, you can go to the MS Hope website and not pay anything to get this information. It is free to you. And this is their open heart to try and share and make a difference and a movement in the world. And the power of that is just incredible. Let me just go back here. So on Big Pharma, I would say they really nailed it. 5 out of 5 in this film. In terms of the MS Society, they weren't objective about both sides. They just pointed to the negative side of, I'd give them a 4 out of 5 on that. And in terms of MS Hope, I would give them a 5. And I will put a link below for MS Hope because I want to support them in continuing to spread the word. So there you go. There's my encapsulation of this whole movie review and my opinion. And I'm sure you'll have your own. So be sure to write your comments below, like, share, subscribe, whatever moves you. And again, if you're a woman living with MS, check out the link for the Women Thriving with MS private Facebook group. I'd love to have you join. It's a wonderful group and you can be a part of it. I'm Jen DeTracy. This is Women Thriving with MS. We will see you soon.